She stood in the bank lobby, clutching a worn purse, her voice trembling as she pleaded for a loan. The bank manager, smug behind his polished desk, didn't just deny her, he laughed. His chuckle echoed through the marble hall, drawing snickers from his staff. "You, alone, come back when you're not scraping pennies," he sneered. She left, humiliated, her face burning. But 7 days later, that same manager was packing his desk, his jaw slack, as she walked in with a briefcase full of papers, and bought the entire bank. How did a woman with nothing turn the tables on a man who thought he held all the power? Where are you reading this from? New York, London, Chicago, or somewhere else? Drop your city in the comments and let's see how far this story travels. Now, let's dive into what happened. Her name was Elena Martinez, a 38-year-old single mother of two, living in a modest apartment in downtown Atlanta. Elena had been through tough times. Her small catering business had tanked during an economic downturn, leaving her with $200 in her account and a pile of bills. She wasn't one to give up, though. She'd always found a way, whether it was working double shifts or selling home-made tamales to neighbors. But this time, she needed more than grit. She needed capital to restart her business. That's what brought her to First Atlanta Bank on a humid Monday morning in July 2025. Elena had heard about the bank's small business loan program. She'd spent weeks preparing a business plan, detailing how she'd scale her catering service into a food truck empire. Her numbers were solid, her vision clear. She walked into the bank wearing her best blazer, her hair neatly pulled back, and her folder of documents tucked under her arm. She was nervous but hopeful. The bank's gleaming marble floors and towering columns made her feel small, but she straightened her shoulders and approached the front desk. They directed her to Richard Hensley, the branch manager. Richard was a fixture at First Atlanta, a 50-something man with a tailored suit and a reputation for being tough on loan applicants. He'd been with the bank for 20 years, climbing the ranks through a mix of charm and ruthlessness. To him, people like Elena were numbers on a page, whether profitable or not. As Elena sat across from him, she felt his eyes sizing her up before she even spoke. "Ms. Martinez, what brings you here?" Richard asked, leaning back in his chair, his tone clipped but polite. Elena took a deep breath and slid her business plan across the desk. "I'm applying for a small business loan. I've got a catering business, and I want to expand into food trucks. I've got a detailed plan here, projected revenue, costs, everything." Richard flipped open the folder, barely glancing at the pages. "And your current financial situation?" he asked, his pen tapping the desk. Elena hesitated. "I'm rebuilding. My business took a hit last year, but I've got steady clients, and this plan will." "How much do you have in savings?" Richard interrupted, his eyes narrowing. "About $200. Elena admitted, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "But I've got orders lined up," and Richard cut her off with a laugh, a sharp, dismissive sound that made Elena flinch. $200? Ms. Martinez, this bank doesn't hand out loans to people who can't even cover a month's rent. You're a risk, a big one." Elena's face flushed, but she pressed on. "I've got a track record. I've run my business for 5 years. I just need a chance to... a chance." Richard leaned forward, his smile cold. "This isn't a charity. You're broke, Ms. Martinez. Come back when you've got something to show for it." He closed her folder and slid it back across the desk. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. Elena's hands trembled as she gathered her papers. A few tellers glanced over, smirking. She stood, her voice low but firm. "You're making a mistake." Richard chuckled again, louder this time. "I'll take that chance. Good luck, Ms. Martinez." She left the bank, the glass doors swinging shut behind her. The humiliation stung, but something else burned brighter resolve. Elena wasn't done, not by a long shot. That night, Elena sat at her kitchen table, her kids asleep in the next room. She stared at her business plan, Richard's words looping in her mind. Broke, risk, charity. She wanted to prove him wrong, not just for herself, but for every person who'd ever been dismissed by someone like him. She wasn't sure how, but she knew she'd find a way. The next morning, Elena got a call from an old friend, Marcus Tate, a tech entrepreneur who'd moved to Silicon Valley. They'd met years ago when Elena catered an event for his startup. Marcus had always admired her hustle. Heard you're looking to expand, he said. What's the plan? Elena told him everything. The food truck idea, the loan rejection, Richard's laughter. Marcus listened quietly, then said, send me your business plan. I know some people. Skeptical but desperate, Elena emailed him the document. 2 days later, Marcus called back. I showed your plan to a venture capital group here. They're interested. Can you meet them in San Francisco tomorrow? Elena's heart raced. Tomorrow, Marcus, I can't afford a plane ticket. I've got you covered, he said. Just get on the plane. She flew out that night, her mind spinning. The meeting was with Pinnacle Ventures, a firm known for backing unconventional entrepreneurs. Elena walked into their sleek office, her blazer slightly wrinkled from the flight, and pitched her heart out. She didn't sugarcoat her situation. She laid out her struggles, her vision, and her numbers. The investors, a group of sharp-eyed men and women, asked tough questions. Why food trucks? What's your edge? How do you handle risk? Elena answered with confidence, her passion cutting through their skepticism. By the end of the meeting, the lead investor, Sarah Kwan, leaned forward. We're in. $5 million equity stake, and we'll need you to scale fast. Can you handle it? Elena nodded, barely believing the words. I can handle it. Back in Atlanta, she kept the deal quiet. She didn't tell her kids, her neighbors, or even Marcus the full details. She signed the paperwork, wired the funds to a new account, and started planning. But her mind kept drifting back to Richard Hensley. She wasn't just going to prove him wrong. She was going to make him regret every word. Over the next 5 days, Elena worked with a lawyer Marcus recommended, a sharp woman named Carla Reyes, who specialized in corporate acquisitions. Elena had an idea, one so bold it made her stomach churn. She didn't just want to start her business. She wanted to own the bank that had humiliated her. Carla raised an eyebrow when Elena first mentioned it. You want to buy First Atlanta? That's ambitious. Is it possible? Elena asked. Carla pulled up the bank's financials. First Atlanta was a regional chain, privately owned, with 12 branches across Georgia. Its parent company, Southern Financial Group, was struggling. Bad loans, high overhead, and a recent dip in stock value. They're vulnerable, Carla said. With the right offer, you could pull it off, but it'll take every cent of your investment and then some. Elena didn't hesitate. Let's do it. Carla connected her with a private equity firm willing to back the deal. Elena's $5 million from Pinnacle Ventures was enough to start negotiations, but she'd need more. She leveraged her catering business's reputation, her new investor backing, and a detailed plan to turn the bank around. Southern Financial's board was desperate to unload the struggling asset. By Friday, Elena had a deal in principle, $12 million for First Atlanta, with her putting up $5 million and the private equity firm covering the rest in exchange for a minority stake. The negotiations were tense. Southern Financial's CEO, Gerald Whitaker, was a gruff man who didn't like being outmaneuvered. In a heated video call, he pushed back. You're a caterer, MS Martinez. What do you know about running a bank? Elena didn't flinch. I know what it's like to be dismissed by one. Your bank's failing because you've got managers like Richard Hensley turning away people who could have been your best customers. I'll fix that. Gerald scoffed. You think you can do better? I know I can. Elena shot back. Your numbers are bleeding. My investors trust me to turn it around. Take the deal or I walk and you're left with a sinking ship. Gerald paused, his face red. After a long silence, he said, Fine, send the paperwork. By Saturday, the deal was finalized. Elena was now the majority owner of First Atlanta Bank. She spent the weekend preparing, barely sleeping. She didn't just want to own the bank. She wanted to walk into Richard's office and see his face when he realized who was in charge. On Monday morning, exactly 1 week after her humiliation, Elena walked into First Atlanta's main branch. She wore a sharp navy suit, her hair sleek, a leather briefcase in hand. The tellers glanced up, confused. She didn't head to the loan desk this time. She walked straight to Richard's office and knocked. Richard looked up, annoyed. MS Martinez, What are you doing here? Elena set her briefcase on his desk and opened it, pulling out a stack of documents. I'm here to discuss your future, Richard. He frowned, leaning back. My future, what's this about? She slid the papers across the desk. These are the acquisition papers. As of this morning, I own First Atlanta Bank, all 12 branches, including this one. Richard's face went pale. He grabbed the documents, scanning them frantically. This is impossible. You're broke. Not anymore. Elena said, her voice calm but cutting. I closed a deal last week. $5 million from investors plus a private equity partner. You laughed at me, Richard. You called me a risk. Now I'm your boss. Richard's mouth opened, but no words came out. His hands shook as he flipped through the papers. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. Finally, he stammered, You can't just, I can. Elena interrupted, And I am. You're fired, effective immediately. Pack your desk. The words hit like a slap. Richard's face twisted. Anger, disbelief, fear. You're making a mistake. He spat, echoing her words from a week ago. I've run this branch for years. You need me. Elena leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. I don't need someone who laughs at people like me. You had your chance to see potential. You failed. Get out. Richard stood, his chair scraping the floor. He grabbed his coat, muttering under his breath, and stormed out. The tellers watched. Why? Died as he left. Elena turned to them, her voice steady. This bank's changing. We're going to support people. Small businesses, single parents, dreamers. If you're not on board, there's the door. By noon, the news had spread. First Atlanta's staff whispered about the new owner, a woman who'd been laughed out of the bank just days ago. Elena spent the day meeting with employees, outlining her vision, lower fees, better loan terms, and a focus on community. By the end of the week, she'd hired a new manager, a woman who'd started as a teller and understood the customers' struggles. Elena's food truck business launched 3 months later, with 3 trucks rolling through Atlanta, each packed with customers. The bank's profits climbed as her reforms took hold. Richard, meanwhile, faded into obscurity, his resume stained by his dismissal. This story isn't just about Elena. It's about what happens when someone underestimates you. So where are you reading this from? Atlanta, Miami, London, or somewhere else? Share your city and tell us, have you ever been underestimated like Elena? Drop it in the comments and let's keep this story going.